I'm speaking with Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. He's the author of The Antidote. He's a man who grew up in the segregated South. He is a black leader. But I have to say, of the many guests I've had on my radio show over the years, Reverend Peterson has drawn some of the most heated criticism and has been one of my most controversial guests. We want to talk about what's happening now, the anger in much of the black society in America, the concern about injustice, ongoing injustice perceived with white cops getting away with killing black men. And is this angry response, Black Lives Matter response, the best response, the most constructive response? Reverend Peterson, Jesse, welcome back to the broadcast. Nice to have you on with us.
Thank you for having me. I absolutely appreciate it.
Well, let me ask you this. When we've had you on a few times in the past, I've noticed as we've put the interview on YouTube, it blows up with criticism from other black Americans. They'll call you an Uncle Tom and then things that are really unprintable. Why do you get such hostility?
Well, we have a black community or black people now, not all, but most are brainwashed, dumbed down, and demoralized. The black rage in the black community is palpable, but it's misdirected, because it starts in the home and not with white people at all. But because no one has really told them this, they have not heard it from majority of people, they now believe that the rage is toward white cops, white people. They think that America is a racist society. Well, we all know now that it's not. And there's no such thing as racism. And I proved that in my book, The Antidote, that there is no such thing as racism. It's either right or wrong, good or evil. And most black people today are on the side of evil. They call good evil and evil good. So any black man or woman who stands up and tells the truth, that is not white people, but it's you, they don't want to hear, so they attack you personally. And that's okay. I understand that they're blind and cannot see, so it doesn't bother me at all. I still tell them the truth.
All right, but let's ask this. When you say there is no racism, I read your book, The Antidote. I really liked it. I thought it was excellent and filled with solutions as well. But when you make statements like racism doesn't exist, what most people hear you saying is that there is no injustice, there is no inequality. The courts in no way are stacked against the poor and in favor of the rich, and there's no racism at all in our society. Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that it's a total equal playing field in America for blacks and whites, or is there something else that you're saying?
What I'm saying is that there is injustice in the world, and all people have to endure it in one form or another. That it has nothing to do with color. It has nothing to do with being male or female. When I was growing up in Alabama on a plantation under the Jim Crow laws, and I remember colors only signs for whites only signs, but we were told that those laws were wrong. It was the government that was doing it to the people, and that it was wrong, and that there are good people in the white community and there are bad folks in the white community, like most communities. But we were told to judge people based on character and not color. And today, because most blacks are failing, instead of taking responsibility for that, they're angry, and so they blame others for their failures, and they feel like victims. It has nothing to do with color. If black Americans want a better life, they're going to have to take control of their lives and not turn it over to the government, do not turn it over to the so-called black leadership, which include the black preachers, because most black preachers are not called by God, but by their mama. They're going to have to take it away from the liberal Democrats and social justice warriors and take responsibility. Instead of having 70% of black children being born out of wedlock, they need to get married. And fathers and mothers need to stay together and by example raise their children as they did prior to the civil rights movement, and blacks were better off. It has nothing to do with color. It's a spiritual thing. Even Martin Luther King Jr. said we should judge people based on character and not color, But when he was assassinated, Jesse Jackson and others took over, and they took a message of forgiveness and love and turned it into hate. And now you have black folks who are the most hateful, evil, radical people on this side of heaven, all in the name of Jesus.
Well, let me ask this then. Two questions, sir. First, I've never been racially profiled as a white American. I never had to teach our children, if they're pulled over by a policeman, to be very careful in their demeanor and what they say because of their skin color or their ethnicity. Yet many black Americans face that because of the color of their skin, they're going to be looked at differently, treated differently. A policeman might be more on the lookout for, say, an 18-year-old black teenager driving around in the car at a certain time of night just because of the color of their skin and because of crime rates and things like that. So first question, when you say it's not about skin color or color, isn't it about color? I know it's a justice issue. I know that's the bigger issue. I know there's spiritual issues. I'm not downplaying the personal responsibility thing. I absolutely resonate with your message about personal responsibility that you put forth in your book, The Antidote. But isn't it a matter of color in terms of day-to-day life?
In this particular case, it's a matter of color because black people have not taught their young people to respect the elderly, to respect the cops. They have been told that whenever you're stopped by the police, it's because you're black. And so when they're stopped by police officers, young and old blacks, they tend to overreact, put the cops' lives at risk, and in return putting their own lives at risk. And because in the black community across the country, black people have allowed gang violence, they have allowed drug dealers, they have allowed rapists, they have allowed murders and all kinds of violent people to live in their communities without correcting them. And then we all know that a whole lot of white folks, day in and day out, are being attacked by young black men and women, robbed, raped, murdered, and then now breaking into their home invasions. And so blacks are known to commit certain types of crimes. And if you know that this community commit certain types of crimes, then you're going to profile that community. If you want cocaine, you're not going to profile the the black community. You're going to profile the white community because cocaine is sold, for the most part, in the white community. And so the reason that blacks are being profiled, not just because they're black, but because they have not done anything to raise good young black children from generation to generation to generation.
All right, so here's my second question. Most black Americans that I'm friendly with, and especially in the church, they seem to be very into family, and family ties really matter to them, and family gatherings and family meals seem to be very important. And you're making broad statements about black parents or black mothers are not doing this for the children or not teaching. How do you reconcile that? It does seem that family is very important in the black community and spirituality as well. And you're making sweeping statements that are very, very strong indictments about people and identifying them by a particular color.
This whole so-called family reunion and family in the black community is a facade. It's a cover-up for being wrong. For example, in the black community, there's a lot of hatred and anger between black people, especially black Christians. They don't get along. Out of wedlock birth is out of control. Abortion out of control. The anger between black men and black women out of control. So what they do is they have these so-called family reunions in order to get a fake feel-good to prove that they're better than the white man or white people. It's not working. It's a cover-up. It's not real. And it also came about as a result of Alice Haley movie Roots. And Alice Haley in that movie gave the impression that blacks were so family-oriented in Africa and other times. And so they're doing it because they think that it's a black thing to do. It's not the real deal. It's still a cover-up for what is wrong. I have to tell you, I've gone to family reunions in my own family, and there are so many problems in those families, and they refuse to deal with it. And I didn't know. I just found out recently, in the last couple of years or so, that this whole black family reunion thing came about as a result of the movie Roots, and it's supposed to be a black thing from Africa. Don't pay attention to that. It is not real. Black families are not united as families. Behind closed doors, there is hell to pay. They're not close at all. There's anger between the husband and wife, if there is a husband, or the boyfriend and their mother, girlfriend, boyfriend. The children hate their mothers. They're yearning for their fathers. Many of them are on drugs. Everybody and their mama having babies out of wedlock. And it wasn't like that when I was growing up. But the family reunion thing is a facade. It is not real.
All right, friends, we've just got a couple more minutes with Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. His book, The Antidote, not only outlines the problems in much of African American society today, but talks about practical solutions and nails people like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, calls them alchemists. So you have to read the book to find out more. And I'm sure many of you watching are agreeing, and many of you are outraged. So weigh in the comments to this YouTube video. Weigh in. That's why we have a comment section. But one last question for you, Reverend Peterson. The whole welfare system, I've had some callers say that white America kept black America down as slaves and got free labor. And then when they couldn't get that anymore, they said, okay, we'll get free votes and we'll make black America dependent on a welfare system. We've just got 2-3 minutes max. What's your take on that? Do you believe there's anything to that? And overall, has the welfare system helped or hurt the black community?
One thing for sure, 100% positive, that black people are not suffering due to slavery at all. That's a lie. Yes, the Democratic Party under Lyndon B. Johnson gave black people, and supported by the civil rights movement, the so-called civil rights leaders, they told black people that we're going to take care of you, we're going to give you welfare, we're going to provide for you, but you can't have a father in the home. And so blacks decided, okay, we'll take the free stuff over the family. So they removed the father from the family. And as you know, when you remove fathers from families, you leave an empty void in the lives of the children. And the wives have to look to someone to take care of them. And so the government did that, corrupting and spoiling black Americans, because whenever you take care of someone, whether it's your own children, you don't require them to work while growing up. You kill that nature inside of them that comes from working. When you work, you grow stronger, you're more secure, you know that you can take care of yourself. But since the government been taking care of them for 50 to 60 years now, the average black young person hate work because they have not seen their parents working and earning their way, and they have been relied on the government. So that has had a major negative impact on the black community. But I blame the black community for that, because at some point, as adults, you need to examine your own self, know thyself, and see what's wrong, and change your life. Because the real battle is not with the world outside of you, it's with the world within you, the conflict that you're having between good and evil within yourself. That's where the real battle is, but most people blame others for that. So yes, the Democratic Party under Lyndon B. Johnson took over the hearts and minds of blacks by giving them free stuff.
Your antidote, in short, is really personal responsibility, is it not?
That's right. And I used to be a liberal at one time. I was a Democrat. I had the same anger. At one time, I relied on the government. And it didn't change until I started to question myself and the world around me. If black people are being held down by white people, why is it that Louis Farrakhan, Jesse Jackson, Maxine Waters, the NAACP, and most of the black preachers are doing very well? They are black. And that's when I started to understand that I had been lied to, because I was following so-called leadership. And whenever you follow another man, they're going to lead you down the wrong path and use you for their own personal gain. And they don't care if you're a male or female, black or white. They love having control over your life.
My friends, we've been talking to Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, his book, The Antidote. Of one thing I'm sure, There'll be no neutrality after watching this interview. Jesse, thanks for joining us again.
As usual, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
All right. That was as controversial as expected. So what do you think? Weigh in on our YouTube channel. Weigh in on the comments. If you don't subscribe to our YouTube videos, click to subscribe today. There's much more coming your way just like this.